This episode of Field Notes is sponsored by Birmingham Fastener. Find out how to reduce lead times for your fasteners. Download their free guide today at bhamfast.com/fasteners. Welcome to Field Notes, the monthly podcast of modern steel construction, the monthly magazine of AISC. I'm your host, Jeff Weisenberger. This month's guest is Fraser Reid, an associate principal with Borough Happold in New York. He was also one of the 2025 AISC Ideas 2 Awards judges, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Fraser, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thanks. Yeah, happy to be here.
So I always like to say, let's start from the beginning. Where are you from, and where did you grow up?
I'm not a US native. I'm originally from Edinburgh in Scotland.
Okay.
I've a bit of a summary, but I've worked for Borough Happold for my whole career.
Okay.
Originally in London. I made the move for university from Scotland to England and moved, to start my career in London. I was there for about 7 years through a senior engineer level, and then I was lucky enough to be transferred over here to New York, and I've been here for a little over a decade.
Was engineering something that you were set upon? You like your entire life, boy, that's what I want to do, or how did you get into that profession to begin with?
It really just started as a kind of interest as a kid in maths and physics, and my parents sort of guided me to stick with what I was good at, and I enjoyed problem solving, kind of a analytical mind. Both of my parents actually had careers in university education, so they were a bit of a modest upbringing, but they were able to give the right pointers at the right time. And as a kid, you don't necessarily know what's out there, and neither of my parents were engineers, but they helped me kind of recognize that no, you're this is what you're good at, and there's a good career out there for you. So had good grades, and I got accepted to Cambridge University in England. No family history of going to Cambridge, so it was definitely a big sort of learning exercise for us with the whole application and interview process. And I thought the hard work was getting in to Cambridge, but quickly learned that the hard work was being there.
Oh, right. Yeah, it doesn't get easier, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But that was it in terms of getting into engineering. Mm-hmm. I remember, my parents took me to this, it's called the Falkirk Wheel. So the Falkirk Wheel was the world's first rotating boat lift. So it's basically, you can Google it online, but it's close to Edinburgh. My parents took me 2 or 3 times, and it's just a really kind of neat, unique engineering story where it's always perfectly balanced.
Right.
Because if you put a floating object in a body of water, then it displaces exactly the same weight of water as the object. So it's always perfectly balanced. So it needs very little energy to lift something or lower it to meet the canal at the higher or the lower elevation. And it's I just remember as a kid being told that it takes the same energy as boiling 12 kettles to lift a boat. And I just found it really interesting, and that to me was sort of the like, oh yeah, buildings are cool, and there's problem solving out there, and you can have fun with it. So
Sure. No, that's a fantastic origin story, so to speak. Well, not maybe not part. I mean, maybe not the origin, but like that, like one of the first things that sort of kind of got you interested in engineering. So since then, it sounds like you spent some time in London, and then you've been in the States for, you said, around a decade or so. I'm just curious. You've got lots of projects out there that I'm sure are memorable, all in their own ways. Could you maybe point to one of your most memorable steel projects that you've worked on as a practicing engineer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my most recent projects really is one of my favorites, and that's for Minnesota Zoo. We just it's sort of the ultimate adaptive reuse project. We turned a disused monorail track into a treetop trail for Minnesota Zoo. Just opened a couple of summers ago. We actually presented it at the Steel Conference last year, and yeah, it was just, this project was my baby through the pandemic. Really, one of those designed virtually through the pandemic, and yeah, just really awesome team, really great project. I think, just we as an industry are recognizing more and more the importance of reuse of existing buildings, and, from a climate standpoint, as well as just historic preservation. So this project just, really connected with the team, and just really proud of the outcome on it.
I think maybe Paris was the first to do it, where they took like a defunct rail line and turned it into a park. And then New York did that with the High Line, and then Chicago's done that here with an elevated train line that had been
disused
for years. And that's cool that they did it with a monorail and in a zoo of all places. That's pretty amazing.
Speaking of the High Line, that's actually Bure Happold we've done all of the engineering work for the High Line in New York. It's sort of a 20+ year relationship that I've last year actually recently inherited. So the High Line is one of our most important clients, I'll say, for our New York team, and believe it or not, the High Line are continuing to expand all the time, and we, at the moment, we probably have 5 or 6 projects for the High Line, active, new stairs and plazas and things like that. So this was really actually the reason Bure Happold got the phone call for Minnesota Zoo, was our work on the High Line. Although the two projects couldn't be much more different from an engineering standpoint, because the High Line was designed for freight trains, and inside secret, but it can support almost anything. And the treetop trail was kind of polar opposite. It was, first thing we kind of highlighted was just the limitations of the original design load. It was designed for a kit per foot, which it really isn't a lot from a engineering standpoint when you start putting live load on there. So yeah, that was one of the early challenges of the treetop trail was, if we're going to reuse this structure, then what's possible? I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, it sounds like you have a role as a sustainability advocate and expert at Bure Happold, and you're involved in SC 2050. Can you talk a little bit about SC 2050 and just like your sustainability role in general? Yeah, sure. So SC 2050 is really a commitment program for structural engineering firms. And it's sort of framed around a goal of achieving net zero in structures by 2050. But I think more importantly at the moment, what it really is data reporting by lots and lots of structural engineering firms. So open access to embodied carbon data for a range of firms and range of projects. But it's also a sort of a big community of people and of firms that I think is unique because when it comes to sort of cross-industry collaboration, competing firms kind of tend to stay in their lane or stay separated from each other. So I think this is something that's unique around climate action is we recognize that really collaboration is key to addressing carbon reduction right now, because that's the nature of the climate crisis is that we're already behind and action is needed straight away. And the only really way to get there is by being open about barriers to carbon reduction and sharing lessons learned and just working together across the industry. So my role now is the embodied carbon champion for Bureau Happold, which each signatory firm has a embodied carbon champion. So that person is responsible for managing basically that firm's commitment to the program, which part of which is data reporting, but also advocacy and education and just ensuring that we are targeting real carbon reductions on our project portfolio. So that's really the role of the embodied carbon champion with SE 2050.
Okay, very good. Yeah, it's nice to know that you have like a sort of a go-to person at each office as well. But no, it's a good, solid collective and obviously worthwhile effort. So I'm glad to hear it. I was, so you've been in New York for a while. I don't know if you've been to Chicago before coming here as an Ideas Towards judge, but just curious about what you thought about that whole experience judging those projects. I can say I've done it a couple times because we always have a staff member, and it can be lively, and sometimes it can be it's always civil, but other times it can be a little more heated in terms of people kind of going back and forth and advocating for their particular project. I'm just curious how you found the experience.
I really enjoyed it. For me, it was sort of a cool opportunity to just see what's out there, what is going on in steel across the industry, and what some of our competitors, structural engineering firms are doing and delivering out there is always interesting as a professional, because you kind of are in your bubble most of the time, and so I found that interesting, and also just an opportunity to be kind of impartial and giving a kind of high level assessment of what's gone well here and where are they really being innovative, or so I enjoyed that. And then the panel is really a group of it's a fairly small group was the first thing I learned. So I'm there representing engineering, and there's an architect and fabricator and contractor in there. I think so. Lots of different perspectives with the goal of kind of agreeing what truly represents best in field or innovative design construction work. And doing that is it takes you out of your day to day, and it was great, and lots of really awesome projects to judge this year. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's a a million different competitions like this out there, and I know some would probably just say, "Hey, we want a jury of nothing but engineers or nothing but architects, et cetera, et cetera." I do like the approach of ours where it's like you get a little bit of perspective from everybody. So yeah, no, it's a cool experience. I'm glad you enjoyed it. When it comes to sustainability, how did you even kind of get to that point in the first place? Were you always interested in environmental science?
Yeah, so the degree at Cambridge was it was quite a theoretical degree, but it was civil, structural, and environmental engineering. So
Okay.
it was part of my education initially, and then when I started with Bure Happold, we were still, let's say, a small enough firm that they were offering things that were unusual because they're easier to facilitate over a smaller firm. One of which was secondments for graduates. So we're a multidisciplinary engineering firm, and the idea back when I started was to kind of give graduates exposure to different teams. So I took I think it was a 3-month secondment with our sustainability team. And yeah, but one of the things we were looking at back then was, embodied impacts of structures, which felt at the time like no one wanted to hear it. Because a lot of the focus in sustainability at that time, and rightfully so, was environmental performance of buildings and energy consumption of active buildings. It was just the biggest piece of the pie chart that needed to be addressed. But it stuck with me at the time that there is this real crossover between structures and sustainability. Then a decade or so later, around the pandemic, Bure Happold had another scheme, let's say, that's still going on, but it was called C-Lab. C-Lab is a program that we're running it's sort of a research and development program where the company commits this many hours a week for you to take off of projects. And so I applied to this program, got in with, I think it was a group of 10-ish of us from the US, and we were a US chapter, and there was a UK chapter, and Bure Happold's a global firm. We had a Asia chapter, and so it was this global community of people who are interested in kind of exploring themes outside of their day-to-day work around sort of challenges in the built environment. So I used that program to kind of dig into embodied carbon as a kind of business question, as well as a sort of industry question. Where are we going here, and what's Bure Happold's role? And in doing so, kind of had to get really into the weeds of, where's the industry at, and how is embodied carbon measured? How should we be tackling embodied carbon? And sort of unwittingly became, a source of knowledge for our structural team in sustainability. It sort of took it from there, because it was around the time where SE 2050 had recently kind of been founded, and we were quite happy to sign on, and took it from there, really.
That's great. I really like the idea of unwittingly becoming a source of knowledge. It's funny how that happens, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's I think advice I would give here for particularly people early in their career, which is it can really help to find your thing.
Sure.
And by that, I mean, like, what do you do that is different and no one else in your team or in your, depending on how wide a net you want to cast in your firm is doing. You don't have to define yourself by that thing, but if you can identify something that sets you apart, then you just find yourself, being brought into meetings that you wouldn't otherwise be brought into, or being asked to opine on sort of decisions that it's that you wouldn't otherwise be asked to, and it can just be a catalyst, I think, for career growth. And so I really encourage that with our younger engineers, is to figure out a passion. You don't have to commit to it for your whole career, but figure out a passion and find a thing that will sort of help stimulate your growth. And yeah.
Sure. No, I think that's excellent advice, especially for younger engineers, like you said. And right, like you said, it's not your only thing, and you might not be the only person who knows anything about it, but you are the go-to person for it. Or you're like one of the, or if not the first person that comes to mind when a certain topic comes up. I think that's excellent advice. I'm glad you had a good experience with being an Ideas 2 Awards judge. I'm curious, how else are you involved with AISC?
So I think my relationship with AISC probably started over lunch with Brian Raff, Jonathan Tavares, who are involved in the sustainability efforts. Jonathan reached out, we went for lunch, and I remember asking the question, which I'm still interested by, but I asked them how AISC can help facilitate more steel reuse as an alternative to recycling. This is really a sort of circular economy question. We have lots of steel in buildings that is totally fit for purpose for reuse in another project when that building is demolished or deconstructed. And what are the barriers in the industry here, and what's AISC's role? So I asked that question, and Brian's response was to invite me to join the AISC think tank, which was a recent thing from the market development committee that Aaron Conaway had sort of spearheaded. So joined this think tank, and for the last 2 or 3 years, been joining some meetings and exploring kind of industry innovation and how AISC is kind of adapting to industry trends, and really, really enjoyed that. And I guess it's the more people you begin to know in the organization, I think the more invitations you get to Ideas 2 and with you, Jeff. So I've always been really fond of steel as a structural material. I just think it's kind of the most pure in terms of its structural behavior and how shapes are made. Just I-beams and H shapes for columns, and just putting the material where it's needed in structural shapes. And it's just always been a material that I've really sort of connected with as a structural engineer. So always really happy to support AISC and all this stuff.
Very good. Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, we appreciate hearing that. And it's funny, we were just talking about, your role, finding your role at a firm, and that in yours is sustainability. And then that sort of got you, so to speak, like not in the door, but you know what I mean? Like with AISC, sort of gotten more involved with that. Starting with a quick conversation. So that's great to hear. That wraps up another edition of Modern Steel Construction's Field Notes podcast. Again, this month's guest was Fraser Reid, and I'm your host, Jeff Weisenberger. Thanks for listening, everyone. Once again, this episode of Field Notes is sponsored by Birmingham Fastener.